Estate Entrepreneurs Podcast.
To the Real Estate Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today, we have Mr. Bobby Triplett, all the way from Brandon, Florida. What's going on, Bobby? How are you?
I'm great, Ricardo. Thanks for having me on today, man. Excited to be here, brother.
My pleasure, man. Can you hear me well?
I got you, man. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I just changed the microphone and I realized that I had the wrong microphone at the beginning. So anyhow, that's the podcasting things, you know, that when you do a podcast and you start paying attention to little details like microphone and things like that. But anyhow, man, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Bobby?
Yeah. So, what I can tell you about the long walks on the beach.
Long walks, brother. Long walks all the way from when you were a little kid running around Clearwater, Florida, or whatever it is that you're from.
Well, I'm born and raised here in the greater Tampa Bay area, and I've been in this real estate investment space on the institutional side for a little over a decade. Started out here in the ministry for about the first 15 years, as a pastor here in Tampa, and then stepped down from doing that full time in like 2013 and had an incredible opportunity with Invitation Homes. It's come in as a leader here in the Tampa market. We had about 7,900 homes we were renting out here just in Tampa. And I got baptism by fire, if you will, like figuring out how to, run maintenance, renovations, and turns there. And been with the company I've been with now for going on 9 years. And I got an older daughter, 3 boys. I coach a lot of baseball and keep pretty busy, my friend.
Good deal, man. Now, when you graduated high school, did you go straight into ministry or?
I went to college. Yeah. So I had been, I grew up in like the Clearwater area and then went to a college called Palm Beach Atlantic University. It's a Christian university out on the east coast of Florida in Palm Beach, and worked my way through a lot of high-end restaurants. I grew up in the restaurant industry and thought I was going to be
you were waiting tables, bartending, all of that.
Yeah, all of it, man. And it was awesome. I learned so much about customer service, about people, about leadership there. And then I thought I was going to be a rock star, man. So I was in a band. This is in the mid 90s. We were recording records and we were flying all over. And then, people start getting married and you start realizing, oh, that's a lot of work. But even that entrepreneurial itch for me was being scratched by there as we're figuring out. I mean, this is pre-social media. This is the AOL is barely a thing at this time. And we're, I was hustling and writing songs and have fun. And then out of there, ended up getting into ministry from there.
Wow. So you went from rock star to a ministry.
Alleged. It was a Christian rock, doing Christian.
It was
rock
a Christian
roll.
band. Okay.
Yeah,
so, all
rock.
right. So, but still, man, I mean, you're still out there touring and playing at what were the places that you normally played at,
So tons of youth rallies and conferences and summer camps and, conventions. We ended up, I think the farthest away from home had us up in like Green Bay and Detroit from Florida. Wow. You know what I mean? And we ended up catching on with this really cool, was where I learned a lot about construction, kind of like a Habitat for Humanity type of Christian camp for high school kids called Team Effort. It was here in St. Petersburg. And, we're fixing up old churches, fixing up old houses, fixing up old shelters, homeless shelters and women's shelters. And that's really where I started getting my feet wet, swinging a hammer and slinging some paint. And little would I know, 2 years, 2-3 years out of that, I was building a church that I was the music pastor of. And 8 years after that, I'm building another church that I'm the senior pastor of. And, 6 or 7 years after that, I'm flipping houses, man. 40,000 houses later, I probably flipped over the last 10 years. It's been a wild ride. Yeah.
Wow. So now, before you went to OfferPad, and we'll talk about OfferPad later.
Sure.
Were you a fix and flipper on your own?
No.
Never.
It was, mainly just, working at, in the kind of like the Habitat for Humanity type of spaces,
right?
And then the church spaces. And so it was a lot of fake it till you make it. when my friend asked me to come help lead the renovation maintenance and turns, he's like, I need a leader more than anything, which just goes you to show you that, like, if you can catch a vision and you can rally people behind it, anybody can figure anything out. And so that's what it was.
Now, tell me about Habitat for Humanity, right? So I lost a lot of deals to Habitat for Humanity because they will come in and it was deals that I was going to buy as an investor, but then Habitat for Humanity will come in and buy them and fix them all up, actually not necessarily buy them, but they will fix them all up for the sellers. And the sellers didn't have to pay for the remodel, right? So their motivation for selling went away, and that's how I didn't get to buy. So can you tell me how they operate?
It was like a Habitat style thing. It wasn't the actual Habitat.
Okay, it wasn't the actual company, right?
But it was a very similar one. I use that terminology loosely just because it's
the most well-known one. Yeah, you're right.
Yes. Yeah. But in that, I mean, you're seeing a lot of that now, even happening on the REO space, where the big players are, hey, how can we maximize our value on these homes? Instead of selling them straight to investors, they're doing renovations on them to try to maximize their resale and also to be ready to put a family back into it. I mean, we do a lot of work for the big REOs right now on the renovation side, and we're seeing that more and more over the last probably 5 or 6 years too.
So how do you get into OfferPad? Like, your friend was looking for a leader, but that. Yeah.
So for 2 years at Invitation Homes, and Invitation is probably one of the largest single-family rental institutions, probably 120,000 doors that we have nationwide. And so after 2 years, I kind of worked my way up and made a name and a reputation for ourselves, and I helped elevate our team. And actually, a general contractor that I had fired came to me and said, hey, Bobby, we need your help fixing us. And so I left the institution space, went to go work directly as the general contractor, working for a bunch of different REITs. And about 6 or 7 months into there, OfferPad came to me and say, hey, listen, we're launching Tampa. It's our first market. OfferPad's out of Phoenix. And it looked like a pretty exciting opportunity. And my time at the GC, I could tell was, I had done the mission that I was supposed to do. And so I ended up coming, and it was a mess, man. They had bought 150 homes, no boots on the ground, no oversight, no nothing. All of it was at auction, and they had one vendor that was writing the scopes of work, quality controlling themselves, stroking their own checks, if you will. And man, it was a hot mess. So my first job was coming in as the sheriff. I didn't have any fancy titles. I probably put 40,000 miles on my truck that year, and I was driving all over just to help get these projects, one, hold people accountable, and two, get them across the finish line so that we could resell them. And in the last 9 years, I mean, it has been a wild evolution of, what we do and who we are. And my team is, I'm in 26 markets in 16 states. I've got employees, that are renovating hundreds of homes every month. And it's definitely a far cry from when I first got into the iBuying space.
So me as an investor, right, when I was heavily fixing flipping, my biggest challenge was managing contractors.
Sure. Yeah.
It was never finding the deal or finding the money. It was actually executing the project, that we're supposed to be doing so we can go make a profit. What makes you a successful contractor manager, I would say, right? Because that's what you are. You're managing thousands of projects right now, right?
Sure. Yeah. There's an evolution. I'll tell you a lot of ways not to do it successfully. I've learned those the hard way, both financially and peace of mind. I think the amount of gray that's coming into my beard is definitely showing how much of a wear and tear that can be. The biggest thing for me, like in managing contractors, was how do I set clear expectations, and then how do I hold people accountable? And if I can find somebody who will catch the vision of what they're going to do, hey man, you'll never have to advertise a day in your life. I will keep you busy, and I will put your kids through college if you just meet these expectations and then help me do this over and over again. When you start finding a couple wins, or you start finding a couple trades, like I can tell you right now, I've got an electrician here in the greater Tampa area that I know I helped him go from one truck to like 2 or 3. And I've got an HVAC guy that I know I could call him at 7 o'clock on a Sunday during dinner time, and he would answer the phone because the relationship and how I've, partnered with him. Where I think people really struggle is 2 things, like using a contractor, like just using them like a tool, as opposed to like, how do I partner with them and kind of show them behind the scenes. And the other part is, quite frankly, you get what you pay for. So when I was working for the biggest institutions that were out there, it was constant conversation. How do we get cheaper? How do we get cheaper? How do we bring our budgets? How do we bring our budgets? And though that is wise and there's good stewardship in that, once you start reducing whatever kind of meat is on the bone, pretty soon the only people that are going to take your jobs are the ones that are either trying to just get started, which you might find a couple gems in there, or you might find some people that it's career number 13, you know what I mean? Or the people that are just going to use you as filler work. Well, for me, I learned really the hard way early on that time is money. So I would rather have a little bit more meat on my bones to give my vendor partner trades and contractors, so that I can demand speed and quality. Because if I can control the speed, man, and these guys are getting paid fast, I'll get a much better product the first time. That's the other thing too. Like when they asked me to come start off with that, I'll never forget my boss at the time, who he's since moved on to a different company. I said, listen, I'll come do this, but we better have the best pay terms in town, because we're asking people to do this inexpensively. We better pay fast. Otherwise, they're going to walk. And I mean, that's one of the things I'm most proud of is my sub trades and my specialty trades. Like, they're getting paid in net 10, net 14 sometimes, you know what I mean? Which is, I'm pretty proud of, because that way I don't expect them to bankroll my projects. They're able to leverage me and get paid quick.
Right. So most people don't even understand what net 10 and net 14 are, right?
Sure.
So
Okay, yeah, sure.
Can we dive a little bit into that? I completely get it, right? But
sure. No, I mean, that's the idea. Like, hey, when the job is done and they send an invoice, they expect to be paid, 2 weeks once the invoice is paid. At that time in the industry, it was, invoice paid, you're getting paid 30 to 60 days. Well, if you're trying to use vendor partners that
is that what the other companies that are maybe your competitors doing? Are they're paying net 30 or net 60 or something like that?
I mean, now it's kind of gotten more industry standard, net 14 to net 21 is, otherwise people are not necessarily showing up to work. Yeah. But at the time, 10 years ago, it was net 30, net 60. And you think about that from like a independent contractor, hey, an electrician who's just himself, he's having to hold that bill, which means if he's put it on a credit card or a line of credit or something like that, now he's paying interest on that.
Yeah, he's financing.
Pretty soon, that 20% or 25% he was trying to make, that's 5% after interest payments are coming out. And now it's not worth it for him to do. That's a super tricky thing. So for us, however I can get my guys paid faster around the country, one, it's going to buy them loyalty to me. Two, it shows them that, hey, this truly is a partnership, because the bean counters in any kind of, big firm, hey, we want to hold the cash as long as we can. And I totally understand that, whatever interest they're getting from whatever banks or whatever debt facilities they have. But for me, it was more important to my operation as a whole to control speed. And if I can control speed, well, then I can control wasted time, and I can control overhead, I control carrying costs. And pretty soon you start making up for whatever interest you were going to make keeping it in the bank by paying your guys faster. Yeah.
Right. Now, in your opinion, because you're in multiple markets, right?
Yes, sir.
What is the it's hard to ask this question because multiple markets got different situations, but
sure.
When you do a rehab,
sure,
what's the first thing you do on the rehab?
The first thing before we swing a hammer or purchase a material is we've got to make sure we know what the win is. Okay, what does a win look like on this property? Because big mistakes that people do, especially in the real estate investment, as a private investor, hey, I got this house, I got a $30,000 budget, but I watched HTV yesterday, right? And I saw this guy on Instagram, or I saw this really cool thing. And now all of a sudden that 30 grand became 40, became 50, became 60, and you've out renovated your comps, or you over improved something that didn't need to be improved. And the money, you're throwing good money after a bad return, because not everything's going to move the needle. I mean, I'll never forget, as long as I live, Ricardo, we had a client of ours in the greater Denver area that we were renovating before. And it was a neighborhood, I'd call it like early 50s block ranchers with basements that, we bought the ugliest house on a block that had not been, gentrified yet. It had not a lot of flippers, or not a lot, a lot of people have been there for a long time. Maybe the kids have taken over the parents. And this client wanted to put $130K into this thing. I'm talking like new hardwoods, new windows, new everything. And they wanted to spend high dollar on the design. And they ended up over renovating for the neighborhood. If they'd have put 55 to 75K into it, put a new roof, put some good LVP, put some decent cabinets, put new HVAC and furnace or whatever, good paint, but not have to go super high-end designer, they would have cleaned up, because now it's in the price point that people in that neighborhood could afford. And so for me, the first thing we've got to do is know what the win looks like. So that way, and then that to me is gospel. All right, hey, this house is a complete gut job, or hey, this is a remove the dead body, spray Febreze and put new, a couple light bulbs in it, whatever. Either way, that's gonna be the governing of how we're gonna approach that project from then on there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, man. I don't know how many times I made that mistake where I went in and overdid a
Sure.
project, because when we were flipping houses, I'm not flipping right now,
Sure.
but in the past I was doing a lot of flips. We had kind of like a cookie cutter system where it was the same paint color, same granite, same cabinets, but sometimes some of the things we did, we probably didn't have to do them.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's money extra that you spend on a rehab that you're probably not going to get back.
Well, yeah, and we think about this, like my team will approach with our clients, hey, is this a fix and flip, or is this a single family rental? Because two different things you want to approach. On a single family rental, this is, free advice. Like, I want to reduce my maintenance cost the life of that lease. So I might replace a roof if it's only got 5 years left. I might replace a water heater if it's 15 years old. Right. I might replace an HVAC if it's 15 years old. Now, on a fix and flip, if there's 5 usable years of life on a roof, or that water heater is perfectly heating water and it's 12 years old, and the HVAC is still cooling off great and it's 15 years old because someone took care of it, I probably wouldn't replace those. I might just service them. You know what I mean? Because I won't get that money back. But what I'll do on a buy and hold, man, I'm going to reduce probably lease turnover. The amount of time I got to go mess with an angry tenant or resident because the HVAC went out. You know what I mean? Like, if I put in a new one, sometimes that's the peace of mind, but those rules are different. You know what I mean?
What's usually your buy box?
For us, like the ones that OfferPad acquires, it's different in each one of our markets, but that median price point is really where our wheelhouse is. We've delved up into the super high end projects, when rates were a little bit lower. But that median price point is really where our sweet spot is. And, we're averaging putting right around 30K into the homes on average. Okay. Paint, flooring, appliances, some handyman fixes, couple mechanical things here and there.
But no major rehabs, right? Like, you guys don't go fix foundations and things like that.
We have. Yes, we have, and we will. That's our sweet spot. And I would say about 80% of the houses are right there. And then the other 20, 10%, we're doing houses that need a big haircut. And then some of them we're doing where, hey, we're just going to do minimal, fixing a couple handyman items and, putting it right back on the market. Obviously, the returns are different on those. But I've got clients that I'm renovating for, both in the Section 8 affordable housing, the REO world. I have multiple 6-figure renovations running right now in certain markets. I mean, very distressed homes, or very dated homes too, and really distressed areas. It's a completely different ballgame. I'm foundations, replums, rewires, new trusses, the whole 9 yards. And, each project is different because, for me, we I'll incentivize my team on speed and quality. And so on the ones where you're just, hey, let's put a new dishwasher, change some light bulbs, and do a deep clean on the house, like that's hard to get done really quick sometimes, because you're having to mobilize. And for us, a clock starts the moment we acquire it. And at the same time, the bigger ones, you have opportunities for permitting issues, or man, now you found a structural mess that's in there. And if you don't know what you're doing and how to navigate those, or you don't have engineers or, foundation people on your team, man, you can find yourself, really kind of shackled to the process, and you lose days. So we, over 9 years of doing this, we've gotten our systems pretty dialed in. I mean, there's always room for improvement, but that's kind of how we've been able to do that with such a wide spectrum of renovations across the country.
Wow. What states or maybe counties have you found that are the ones that are the hardest to work with?
Oh, 100%. That's the easiest thing for me to tell you. So of the places where we currently are renovating, man, St. Louis is probably the most difficult place that I'm
really
renovating. And this isn't like a political thing, but like the bluer the city, the more labor union friendly.
Yeah, they got to put more red tape on it.
Right. There's more red tape. There's more municipalities want their hands out. And I understand, the intention of where some of that came from was probably good, but man, it is a gauntlet you have to run through. Minneapolis is very municipality heavy. We're up there, and both of those places, if you don't follow the letter of the law, like you are going to get stuck, or you'll get red tagged, or you'll get flagged by the municipality. And they're like, hey, this guy's just trying to skirt the system. And then you really found yourself like at a screeching halt. Where we see too, like, because I'm from Florida, in the greater Tampa area, the water, when you're on any kind of coastal or intercoastal waterway, and you're pulling permits to pull permits. You know what I mean? A lot of times, I don't know if the state of Texas knows what the word permit is, you know what I mean? Unless you're on the water, so it's easier in places like, Atlanta, the greater Atlanta metro, the Carolinas, Texas is really easy to renovate in.
Texas it depends where it's at, right? So if you're in Harris County, that's not
sure.
like especially if you're close to downtown, forget it. You're pulling permits because they got these little the inspectors are running around looking for rehabs.
Right.
And it's easy to get a red tag. But if you're in like Bay City, Texas, which is an hour away from Houston, forget it, man. You can do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, even if you're in like Spring or the Woodlands, or parts of like Plano, or other parts are in more rural, or not rural, but more suburban areas.
Right.
Like, man, typically it's easier when you're in any kind of downtown area. Like, I know the city, like if I renovate in the city of Tampa, I'm having to pull permits every single time. Otherwise, you're going to get red tagged, and it's just not worth it. If I'm on the water, same thing.
What are the most common? And now you mentioned water, right? I don't think I've ever done a rehab. No, I have actually. I did one in the beach, in Houston. But in your experience, what are the most common things to look for on a rehab that's on the water?
Well, first thing in my opinion, you're going to want to look and see, like, has there been any storm damage before, and what was the case there? A lot of times, if somebody had storm damage and they were still planning on staying in it, they might have done a fix themselves. And, if you're looking for microbial growth, or, we just had a couple hurricanes here in Tampa, and, if salt water touches copper, you're going to have to rewire, because it's going to expedite the corrosion factor, which is going to lead towards some fire safety that you just don't want to risk it on your investment. Or at least, hey, if it's your own home, you don't want to risk your family sleeping at night. So I think that would be some of the biggest things for us there. Galveston area, and then the Gulf area here, us in Florida, hurricanes are a big deal. So you're looking at the age of the roof.
Right.
Like, where are we at on, usable life? Is it going to pass wind mitigation? Because if it's not, then somebody's going to have a hard time getting insurance on that house. Windows are the same thing too. In certain areas where you're in wind zones, like, hey, they've got to be hurricane rated windows. Maybe not if you're grandfathered in, but if you start doing major renovations to that house, FEMA can come in and say, hey, you've done more than 50% of the value of this house. Now you have to bring the whole thing up to code.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some landmines out there if you're not used to it. That, you know, trust me, I've blown up a few times. You know what I mean? And I know, I'll tell you where not to step.
Yeah, I had a friend. We wholesaled the house to him in I think it was Highlands, Texas. It's around Houston, and this area flooded big time, like multiple times. And he started doing renovations, and they made him raise the property. Like it was
Wow.
a slab foundation, which is very costly to do, you
Oh,
know.
for sure, for sure.
But to his luck, the county was offering a grant for doing that. So
Oh, okay. Well, that's beautiful.
it was $130,000 he didn't have to pay to raise the property. Like I think it was 5 feet up in
Yeah.
the air, but it took him 2 years.
Yeah.
So you know, like the speed of money is like he was stuck on a deal for almost 2 years
Yeah.
while he
That's
went through the
tough.
whole county process. But at the end of the day, he didn't have to pay 130 grand to raise it.
There
Otherwise, he
you
would
go.
have lost his money on that deal, you know, because the ARV on the property wasn't really there to support $130,000 raise, right?
For sure.
So,
For sure.
have you ever run into things like that to where they're
Yeah.
like, "Man, you guys bought the property, and now you're like, oh man, we got to go do all this work that we didn't really account for."
Yeah, and I think a lot of I mean, if you haven't done that as a real estate investor, then you haven't really been in the game that long, because
Right.
everybody's going to run against that. It's okay. What are my options? What do we need to do? Maybe we don't do X, Y, and Z part of the reno, and maybe we just because a lot of that has to do with improvement to value ratios that FEMA is going to do. So, you know, there are guidelines that if you stay within, then you don't have to raise the house. But if you go over those guidelines and try to over improve, then hey, they're trying to reduce risk on the house. So then you have to. So we've made some strategic. We've not been to the place where we've had to raise. I'll never forget as long as I live. You know, a lot of people in this space will buy homes where they've got some homeowner specials that have been done, and I'll never forget. It was a northern municipality here of the Tampa area. I want to say it was Holiday or Hudson. It was on an intercoastal. The house had been renovated probably 10 years before we bought it. Nothing fancy. And it wasn't a fancy house at all. Maybe 50s, 60s block rancher, 3-2, 1,400 square feet. But it was on a dock on the intercoastal, and it had this magnificent aluminum structure in the backyard. You know, just like we call them bird cages here in Florida, or screened in,
Right.
You know, that made the whole house. Well, we buy the house, and that municipality decided they wanted to red tag us for windows that we did not put in the house. They were 10 years old. And also that aluminum porch back there, well, that's not permitted, so you're going to have to remove that. And we end up finding ourselves like the biggest selling points of the house we're having
Wow.
to redo. We were stuck on the deal for a year and a half. This was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And man, just pulling out your hair, because, you know, we hadn't done the due diligence on the acquisition side to see that most of this stuff wasn't permitted, or didn't realize that those particular areas were, you know, really under scrutiny by their code enforcement. Yeah, definitely. I learned that lesson the hard way.
How do you find? Well, you know, I guess in my case, I will go out and look for inspectors running around town, right?
Sure.
But other than that, how do you find out whether there is a certain area that's being very scrutinized by inspectors?
So they get a reputation. You know what I mean? They'll get like, for instance, we had in the state of Alabama, we did quite a bit of work in Birmingham over the years, and there is a city or like a municipality in Birmingham that, I mean, their inspectors were doing the same things. And so they were looking on Saturdays and Sundays for dump trailers. You know what I mean? And so I remember getting red tagged on a house, and I ended up speaking with the head of the state inspection, and all we were doing on this house was new carpet and paint, right? And I got red tagged. And so I asked the state inspector, I said, "Man, like, are you telling me there's a carpet and a paint permit in the city of Birmingham?" "Well, no, there's not." "Well, then why am I getting red tagged?" "Well, because you spent more than $1,000. I said, "But I'm doing carpet and I'm doing paint. There's literally nothing else going into this house. Like, here's the pictures. It's carpet and it's paint." She was like, "Yeah, well, there's not a permit for that." "Well, then how am I getting red tagged?" "Well, because you didn't pull a permit." And it was this, you know, and you come to find out in that particular municipality, any improvements over $1,000, whatever it is, you have to pull a $50 permit. No one comes and inspects it. No one comes to see it, but
they just want their $50. That's it.
And so like I asked her, I was like, ma'am, you got to understand, like, I have never heard of something like this in my life. And I learned that lesson, that it was much easier to pay the $50.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As ridiculous as it sounded, than it was to, try to have a, dynamic debate about carpet and paint permits that don't exist.
Yeah, I had a property like that. We still own it, actually, where they came in and we were just doing paint and laminate flooring. So didn't really work on electrical or anything like that. And the inspector just came in and put a red tag on it. And my wife was freaking out because she was the one doing the project. So she calls me up and I'm like, well, let's go to the city and find out. And go to the city. Some of the nicest people that you'll ever talk to. They're like, look, son, we just want your money. We don't like, and I'm like, perfect. What do I fill out? What do I pay?
Yeah.
Let's do this, right? Done. That was it. So,
Yeah.
So it's now sometimes, some people say it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a big question mark. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I will tell you, I'm never risking it on anything electrical, anything plumbing, anything structural, anything roof, anything that's an insurability factor. Like those were hard no's for me. I'm pulling.
Can we talk about that for a second, right? Like what are the most or the must pull permits jobs that we as investors we need to pull permits on?
Yeah, mainly it's all dealing around insurability, right? The person who's going to then buy this house, if they can't get a homeowner's policy, well, then you just rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. You know what I mean?
Right.
So electrical panels, big one. Aged properties, we see this all over the country. There's still a lot of polybutylene pipe out there, or gray pipe. Some states, like my state, it's 100% uninsurable. So you have to replumb that house.
Galvanized piping, right?
Yeah. No, this one is polybutylene. Galvanized, we still deal with galvanized as well, but polybutylene is that gray pipe. It's got the copper bindings on that come to right angles on them. And
I never bumped into that. Where do you find
it was a lot in the 70s. A lot of 70s built, at least in the Orlando area. We see it a lot. It was popular up in Atlanta and the Carolinas back in the 70s too. But you have to completely replumb it, and you need to pull a permit so that the record of the removal of the unsurable pipe and then the installation of the new CPVC or PEX or whatever you're putting in, because that next home buyer can't get a policy on it if it not. There's a couple of different type of electrical panels, the Zinscos, the stab locks, anything with fuses that are still in them. You'll see like those are uninsurable for good reasons. Though that might have been fine for 70 years in this one house that it existed, you buy it and then all of a sudden it'll arc and the breakers won't flip and then you'll burn your house down. I've run that kind of way.
Now, have you ever bumped into properties that, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'd rather for you to say that, right?
Sure.
That the homeowner went and replumbed the property and he did it right. Like he did the CPVC or PEX or whatever, got rid of that old pipe, but didn't pull the permit.
Right. Yeah. You're going to, like, those times in certain municipalities, you're going to have to pull a permit after the fact with a plumber. And then this is where relationship comes in. Hey, I know this was done right. It wasn't done by me. Can I pay you an inspection fee? Right. And then if you see anything, like, write me a bill to fix it. And then we'll call in for an inspection from the county and then they'll pass it. If you don't have a plumber that's a partner with you to do that, why would they put their license on risk?
Of course.
But if you're also running the risk that, like, hey, Joe's Plumbing is going to come in and he might still find $1,000 worth of stuff he's got to fix. We'll pay him that $1,000. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely. Let's get that done. Even though it technically looks like it's done right, but it's a homeowner special. That's why for me on the major insurability, the mechanicals, electricals, the plumbings, it's not worth it. I'm always going to go with my plumber. Do I need to pull a plumber to come put a P-trap in on a sink? No, not necessarily. Do I need to pull a plumber to have to, set a toilet? Not necessarily, but do I need to pull a plumber to repipe or put in a new stack or to put a new sewer line in? 100% every single time.
Right. So let's talk about mechanicals, right? Like in Houston, where I did a lot of properties, those are the first things I fixed. Number one was the foundation. That was the first one. Like
you guys have a lot of that out there.
There are two types of properties in Houston: the ones that have foundation problems, and the ones that will have foundation problems.
Amen to that, brother.
so that was the first thing we touched, and then we went for the roof. And you're right, making sure your roofer knows what they're doing, because a lot of times what happens is you get roofers that are coming from other states.
Yeah.
And then they start nailing, let's say, the shingles with a gun when it has to be hand nailed because it's windstorm inspected, right?
Right.
So that happens a lot in Houston, where they come in and they start, nailing with a gun. And guess what? The windstorm inspector shows up and is like, "What are you guys doing? Like this roof needs to go," right? So then we did the roof. Then after the roof, we went and did the plumbing. So the plumbing was number 3 for us. That's kind of like the sequence. And then the electrical. And then after that, it was the AC. Now, anything after that was leftover money pretty much for cosmetics. I would put it. Because now when you if you're redoing foundation, roof, plumbing, electrical, and AC,
30K, 40K.
That's
easily.
40K, 40, even sometimes it's even 50K, depending on how big the property is.
Right. Yeah.
And then people that are watching HGTV, they want to do the hardwood floors. And
oh my gosh,
how many times have you seen people go and do the floors, the countertops, the backsplash, the tile in the bathroom, but didn't change a single thing on the mechanicals?
Yeah. And that's where the very tough part. And if that's for your home, right? Or, hey, you're turning that into a single family rental and you're willing to put that risk on there, okay, that's up to you. But like, I don't want to spend good money on cosmetics on a house that it can't be insured.
Right.
Because now all of a sudden that investment has got a big question mark over it. What happens when that panel arcs and it catches fire? Well, all those brand new hardwood floors, they burn up real nice. You know what I mean? That's the thing. And then thinking about, like, I tell people all the time, like when I was first, when our company was really exploding, we were doing about 1,200 flips a month of our own properties for about 2 years straight. I mean, it was insane.
How big of a team do you have to handle? Look, I used to do 50 flips at a time. Okay.
Right.
I had over 100 people on my team.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a big team. So I've got,
I can only think of the numbers that you're telling me, 1,200 flips a month. It's like, how many people do you need in there?
Well, for me, I'm trying to reproduce myself, right? So I'd have directors in each market, and then they would have project managers, and then they would have some foremen and crew, and then we'd have a ton of vendor partners. But you think about that, in 26 markets, the amount of people that we'd have to have. Otherwise, I mean, there's a reason why I have a career, because it's not easy. First question, back to managing contractors, like that is not easy.
Right.
So having the people with local authority, local knowledge, local expertise, local relationships was 100% the game changer. But every time I'm training them, let's just go back to what we were talking about a second ago. Like, hey, I want you to renovate this house, write a budget as you're renovating this house, and it's your money, but you're not living in it. That's the difference. Does that perfectly fine black ceiling fan in bedroom 3, is it okay to keep if it's working, right? If it was your money, would you do that to flip the house? Or do we need to match everything in the house all the time? The answer is maybe, right? Because certain comp levels, hey, I might need every single outlet, to be brand new, every single cover to be brand new. I need every single doorknob to match every single fixture, to match every single faucet. Great. And then sometimes you're in a comp level where, hey, no, I got a brand new kitchen. I need everything in the place that is visible of line of sight to match, but I'm not worried about bedroom 2, 3, and 4 because they've got perfectly fine white ceiling fan in there, and we can close the door and it matches itself. So asking people to think about it, we call it stewardship, from a stewardship perspective. Are these real estate decisions going to move the needle, and will I be the best manager of these funds? Where we really found like the struggle was where guys and girls would come in and want it to look HGTV. Well, I want to put Sheplap and I want to do this. And I like, hey, we're out kicking our coverage here, man. Or you don't have the time to get that done in the time that this house has to be ready to go on the market. And so there's a whole lot of opportunity for, redefining your process based on what's the ultimate win. And if that's gospel, that should inform every decision we make in the house.
That's amazing, man. I wish I would have learned a lot of the lessons that you talked about today, Bobby. When I first started, I started in 2008, man, and I started like completely. It was all ignorance on steroids. Right? I just didn't know what I didn't know. You know what I mean? So I ended up overdoing properties. I ended up getting. Let me ask you this question, right? From an institutional and even from an individual perspective. How do you make sure that you don't get scammed by a contractor?
Yeah, well, first thing, like nobody's allowed to do work with us who's not licensed, bonded, insured, and they carry the highest level of insurances, right? Both from a workers' comp and from a umbrella policy. And even in that, I have fired many contractors for trying to do shady things. The best way, and my number 2, his name's DJ. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, he's in charge. He's out of Charlotte. He always said, trust but verify. You know what I mean? To make sure, like we don't ever want to take a vendor partner's word for it unless we verified it.
Right.
Or hey, because hey man, yeah, I finished. I fixed that leaky faucet. Or hey, yep, I installed that fence panel that blew down for you. And a lot of times it's not because they have bad intentions or they're a shady person or trying to scam you, but they might have somebody on their team that's not thinking about a bigger picture, or like, crap, I forgot to get a picture. Oh, I'll go there tomorrow. So let me send them a picture of a place yesterday, completely different. And, I tell my wife all the time, man, I could take a picture and pretend I've got a 6-pack, but you and I both know I don't have anything close to a 6-pack, shadows and shades and whatever. So like pictures don't tell the whole story. So the 100%, the only way I believe to ensure that you're not going to be scammed or taken advantage of is to have boots on the ground, somebody to verify, right? And somebody to constantly be in communication. Or if you can't afford to do that, that you have a vendor partner or a contractor partner that you have created a partnership trust with, that is not looking to just like, hey man, how do I get the most out of this property? More like, hey, how do I build a lasting relationship? Those are, in my opinion, without one of those two things or both, you're going to find yourself a victim sooner than you'd like to.
Now, with your contractors, you say you pay net 10 and 20 and 14, right? But most contractors love asking for money up front.
Sure.
How do you guys handle that?
Yeah, I mean, for us as a company, we do require for about 60% of our clients, a deposit that's there, in order to, and then we're going to fully fund the whole project from there on out, and then our next payment will be the final one that we invoice.
Pretty much, okay.
Yeah, with
now,
our
you as a contractor, but I'm talking about you managing the contractors, right?
Yeah, so we have what we call vendor agreements, master agreements that we have in place that they understand what payment terms are before they even onboard with us. They understand what our process, what our change order process, what our invoicing process, what all that stuff comes from. And there are certain jobs where they're massive, and I can't ask somebody to float a $200,000 big, huge, historical retrofit in St. Louis. And then there are jobs where like, hey, it's your portion of this job is only $3,000. There's no upfront for that. You know what I mean? It's you'll invoice it and I'll have you paid within 2 weeks of you invoicing. We spend
go do the job, send me the invoice. I'll go verify that you did the job and then you'll get paid.
Right. What we do is, we truly, my project managers and directors, even on our OfferPad owned homes, like we're acting as the general contractor. I mean, I'm a licensed general contractor for Florida. I've got one in every state that we're operating in that requires it. You know what I mean? And those are my employees. So we're not just saying, okay, Ricardo's construction company, you get the whole scope. We're saying, hey, okay, I'm direct vending to my roofer. I'm direct vending to my HVAC. I'm direct vending to my flooring. And I have national partnerships with like PPG paints. Is every piece of paint we put on a wall is PPG, and we get great discounts and we get great partnerships. Same thing with like our flooring is all Mohawk, and we have a great relationship with Mohawk for. So that helps us get better pricing. But in doing that, I don't have to say, Ricardo, you have to eat this whole thing and I'll pay you 2 weeks after it's done, by us going direct vendor. Now, the difference is if you're going to do that, you've got to have the boots on the ground to project manage it.
Right.
And if you're an individual investor and you've never done that before and you don't have boots on the ground, your head's going to spin, and it's going to be, it is definitely a learned behavior and a learned habit to be able to do that effectively.
Yeah, that's the reason I ask you this is because, a lot of the new investors, they come in, they buy a property, and then the contractor shows up and says, oh, you got to give me 50% up front. Sure. They go cut the check and they're gone, right?
It's so scary. It's so scary, man.
Well, that's look at what happened to me. So this is years ago. I had already done over 10 projects with this particular contractor. And I had upfronted money all the time. Like, no big deal, man. A couple of grand for the paint, a couple of grand for this. Now, the way I used to do it was I used to go in and get them to do the demo first. And as soon as they did the demo, no problem. So here's your first draw. I'll give you some money, because you got to keep them up with oxygen on their masks too. Otherwise, they can't pay bills. Well, this guy really seasoned me. He went and we did over 10 to 15 projects together. And I bought 3 properties at the time. And he said, hey, man, we need roughly about 50 grand worth of stuff for the 3 projects to get kicked off. And no problems. I had already given him a lot of money in the past. Sure. And I wrote him a check. I never saw him again.
Oh, my gosh. That's heartbreaking.
I'll take that back. I saw him like 10 years after. Maybe it was longer than that. I bumped into him at a car wash and I looked at him and he saw me and he thought he saw the devil, right? And I looked at him and I said, and by the way, his name is Eric. I said, Eric, I'm sorry, man. I already forgave you a long time ago, because if I would have held that grudge on me, I would have literally pulled the gun out and because he put me in a really bad spot at the time, right? So that's why I ask you all these questions about handling contractors, having agreements in place. If you're the solopreneur that's flipping a house, like, how do you really manage that? Because you guys are already pros at establishing agreements. You're overqualifying your contractor. I mean, umbrella policies, right? Like, they gotta be insured. And you mentioned today something that's, I think it's the first time somebody actually says it on the over 400 episodes that we got, Bobby, is insurability.
Right.
Like, is your property going to be able to get an insurance policy on it? And if not, then you need to be doing whatever it is so you can, because what happens when you finish the project and you sell the property and the next person is going to buy it? If they can't get insurance policy, guess what? They might not be able to buy it because the mortgage is not going to fund unless there's an insurance policy in it, right? So making sure your policies, your properties insurable is probably one of the main takeaways I get today.
For sure. Because that's the last thing because if not, then that person's going to fall out. They're going to cancel their contract on you. And unless they are putting it into a big portfolio that they've got an umbrella policy on, but that's a very small buy box or very small buyer who's got the ability to do that. So for you, as you are underwriting the property and looking like, if I do these things, will it get it insurable? And if so, will they get me the comp level that I want? Then off to the races. Let's do it. If not, or if you don't have the funds to make it insurable, you've shrunken your buyer pool, in my opinion.
Now, what are the things that you're looking for today, Bobby? Are you looking for more contractors? Are you looking for maybe different clients? What is it that you're looking to attract?
So it's funny that you asked. So for the first 6 years of doing OfferPad, we bought, renovate, and sold tens of thousands of our own homes. And like all we were doing was our own project. All of my employees, I was my only client. In the last 2.5 years, we've been swinging hammers for probably 50 different clients around the country, biggest REOs, some of the REITs, some mid-sized single-family rental shops. But in the last year, when I met you in Tampa recently, like, the private shop fix and flipper, the private shop, single-family rental, really have, found a sweet spot together, partnering there, doing the renovation. So, because I'm getting it at like a wholesale plus cost, you know what I mean? Because I've spent so much a year, and I've got, and then I've got all of these employees that they're currently still renovating my homes anyway. Now, those solo entrepreneurs kind of get to rent my guys, for their project. Right. That's what I'm looking for. How can I find client partners that are, that need help on the renovation side? Who I'm not looking for are the people that already have a need, right?
Right.
If they already have, somebody running a renovation operations and they've got plenty of people in the field, that's not the right client. They don't need me. You know what I mean? But for people who are doing 1 or 2 deals a month, or hey, even 10 or 15 deals a month, but don't have the boots on the ground, I'm looking to have a conversation and see if we're the right fit for each other. I'm also looking for some new contractor partners too. It's funny. I've had, since joining some of these masterminds that we're talking about, I've had so many people ask me to expand into areas that I'm not currently at. You know what I mean? And hey, I'm buying 10 houses a month in this city. Like one of them is Midland, Texas. I'm in Dawson. I'm in Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, and Houston, but I'm not in Midland.
You're not in Midland.
And we would give you so much. And so like, okay.
That must be Nick Ligamaro, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like it's that, or like trying to figure out, like, cause I want to say yes, but honestly, like as a partner, I would rather say no until I can say a real yes.
Yeah. You're set up over there correctly.
Yeah, because I've had people give me yeses that they should have never given me, and it ends up burning bridges, and that's the last thing I want to do. So those are the 2 types of things. So I'm looking for contractor partners in some of the markets that we're not, and hey, some of the markets we're currently in, and I'll send you over a map if you want it, man. It's got all the places where we're at.
Where are your what's the bulk of your operation right now? So
yeah, so my
somebody's listening, they can hit you up.
Yeah, my biggest teams right now, where we're like, Atlanta, Charlotte, Raleigh, Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, the 4 big Texas markets. But I'm also doing quite a bit of work in Vegas, in Houston, in Phoenix, Kansas City, St. Louis, Minneapolis, Indy, Ohio, Denver, Colorado Springs. I mean, we're all over the place. And so definitely opportunity from a client partner side, and then opportunity from a contractor partner side, both ways.
How do people get in contact with you, Bobby?
Yeah, if you go to offerpad.com/renovate. Offerpad.com/renovate. If you're a new client and you want to tell us about your project, I'll set up a one-on-one with you, and just let us know that you heard about us here on the podcast today. Or if you're a vendor, you can go to offerpad.com/vendor, and it'll give you an opportunity to send us a message, and we'll connect right back with you.
Awesome, brother, man. Thank you so much for being here today, Bobby, and sharing all your experience. How many flips have you done in total, do you think?
Right around 40,000. Right around
40,000 flips, man. I thought I was a big guy, but forget it, man. You went past my numbers.
Well, I only am able to do it because of the amazing team I have.
Like 1,000x,
Yeah.
So amazing. So thank you so much, Bobby. Guys, don't forget to hit share, like, and subscribe. Go make sure you find Bobby if you think you can work with him, whether you're a contractor or an investor, even if you need, a turnkey team, he's got it already. So might as well go hit him up. And Tampa, Florida, June 27th, 28th, we have a 10 growth. Make sure you get tickets on the website. It's going live actually today. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
All right, my pleasure, brother.